don't forget, we need to follow the podcast so we know when new episodes drop. Welcome, everybody, to Leadership of the Leaf, where we discuss various topics of cigars and as well as leadership and try to just give our pointers on different leadership topics as well as different cigar topics. My name is Austin.
I'm Dice.
And let's jump in with a cut and a light. What are you smoking on?
This is the first time I smoked this one. It's a Bandolero Series T.
Bandolero.
You ever heard of it?
I have not. I am smoking a Black Label Trading Company cigar called Lawless.
That's a good name. Not sure about the size of this one. It's like a 52, 54, 6 by 54. Okay, so for this episode, we're going to be talking about the proper humidification of your cigars, which is a must-do if you're going to be someone that is going to be holding onto your cigars for a while.
And later on in our leadership segment, we're going to be talking about the importance of deadlines, which is always something very important to do and set.
Most definitely, which I am now enjoying the first third of this cigar.
Yeah, this cigar that I'm smoking is absolutely delicious. It's a Habano wrapper and a Nicaraguan filler, and I'm getting pepper and espresso cocoa and a little bit of spice, but not too much. Very, very, very well balanced.
My cigar, when I looked it up, it didn't really have much information about it. Everything left it to a mystery. But I'm looking at the wrapper, and I can tell it's a dark wrapper, so more than likely it's like a Nicaraguan wrap.
Yeah.
And my first third flavor profile is coming up really, really leather and citrusy, which I don't mind. I like it a lot. I like it quite a bit.
And what are you sipping on tonight?
Well, my friend, I'm glad you asked.
Let me guess.
Go for it.
Hennessy?
Oh, that's you nailed it, sir.
Oh,
this
man.
time I'm using a chilled spirit just to keep it nice and neat without watering it down.
Well, I am sipping on some Glenfiddich 10-year, and I'm actually using an ice sphere because I don't mind it watering down too much because I drink it quick enough that it just takes a little bit of that edge off, makes it a nice, smooth, mellow sip.
I hear some Scotch drinkers prefer to add actually water into the Scotch.
So actually, Frank Sinatra was famous for that. He actually used to always ask for 2 fingers of Jack, which I know is not a Scotch. Don't murder me, people. 2 fingers of Jack over 3 ice cubes and a splash of water.
Did not know that.
That is how he ordered his drinks all the time. So if Mickey Blue Eyes orders it like that, I mean, can you really go wrong?
I guess not. I guess not.
All right, but let's jump into this week's topics of humidification. So we talked a little bit last week about the rule of thumb is a 70-70, meaning 70% humidity and 70 degrees Fahrenheit of your cigars. And that's usually where most cigars smokers want to keep their stuff. I prefer mine a little bit on the cooler side. I don't like them getting too hot. I think it makes it a little bit nicer and it keeps the humidity from getting too rampant. You know, cold air is usually drier air. And so I also throw in 69% Boveda packs.
Boveda packs. There's so many different ways to humidify your cigars in your humidor. We'll discuss those a little bit later. The climates where I'm at is a dry desert. I struggle to keep my humidor around 70 degrees. Even though I keep my house around 72, I try to keep my humidor around 70 in temperature. When it comes to humidity, it's also a fight, but I try to keep mine around 65. That's like my sweet spot.
And see, I find 65 is a little bit too dry for me, for my cigars. Where I live in the panhandle of Florida, it is very humid, so I have almost no issues keeping it at the 68, 69% range, which is where I like it, you know, relative humidity as measured on a hygrometer. Yes, that is the proper terminology for the dial, the gauge, whatever you want to call it, in your humidor that measures the relative humidity and usually temperature of your humidor.
Now, I know talking about hygrometers, a lot of people really love how the needle one analog, how that really looked. And I can see the aesthetics with your humidors, depending on which kind you got, it really fits well. But what I have discovered is it's hard to try to keep those on point, should I say, as compared to a digital one. Digital ones normally stay accurate a little bit longer, in my opinion.
Yes, definitely the accuracy is an issue with the analog type. When I first got into cigar smoking, the first thing that I was told when I was setting up a humidor is take that analog hygrometer, if it's not built into your humidor and gives it a nice, cool, aesthetic look, chuck it. it and get you a nice digital hygrometer that you calibrate and stick it in your humidor and let that read everything for you, because those are so much more accurate and they last so much longer. They don't wear down, and it's just a lot better for your cigars overall.
There's also other things out there that can help aid you in this. I don't. It's pretty new. I'm not sure if it's new or not. The Boveda Butler.
Yep.
There's all other different kinds out there. I don't want to go through all the names of the different butlers.
Oh yeah.
That kind of keeps track of the humidity inside your humidor. With a good digital hygrometer, you should be able to keep track without having the butler.
Yeah. The one that I first got was a Zycar, which is, if you know anything about cigars, Zycars usually make lighters and cutters and basically cigar accessories, and they're really good at what they do. So I just got a little round Zycar one, and then later on I upgraded to a Boveda Butler, and it came with a calibration kit. And usually what you want to do is you want to take your hygrometer and you want to stick it in an airtight area with a known humidification level. So with the Boveda Butler, you stick it in a nice plastic sealed bag and you get a 75% Boveda pack, and you stick it in there with it. Make sure that it reads 75% over the course of a couple days. If it does, then it's properly calibrated. If it's not, then you got to get with the manufacturer to change it, because everything's different. Well, we're not going through all of them, as Dice already said. So it's really important that you know that your hygrometer is properly calibrated for the proper care of your cigars.
But once you get your hygrometer on point and it's all calibrated, it's accurate, you're good to go. What are your thoughts about seasoning your humidor? Because I have heard several different ways that people should do it, and I heard a way that people should never do it. Now, I personally have my opinions of how to get it done. I'm just curious, how do you season your humidor?
So I have actually seasoned 2 different humidors and done a third one for a friend, and I've done each one of them different ways. Now, that being said, I have used the same hygrometer in my 2 humidors. I had an old humidor and I got me a new one, which is the nice one. So the first time I took a paper towel, I moistened it up with distilled water because I didn't want the impurities getting into the Spanish cedar. That's the type of wood that's in a humidor. And I wiped it down and made the wood all nice and wet. I let it dry over a day, and then I wiped it down again. And I kind of did this back and forth for about 3 days. And then I stuck my hygrometer in there and my cigars, and I closely monitored them for the next 3 to 4 days to make sure that everything was good. As long as it kept the humidity, I was money. The next one that I got, I actually took a spray bottle of distilled water and I sprayed everything that was wood in that humidor down for a week, morning and night for a week. And then I stuck my Boveda packs and my cigars in there, and I've had 0 issues. The third way that I've done it, and this guy has reported no issues to me, is I just threw Boveda packs in there for a week and let him humidify.
Got it. Yes. Now, I will share with you what I've heard and my opinions. What I've heard is the worst way to season your humidor is by wiping it down. I was told that because it roughs up the cedar and it roughs up the liner to where it can actually damage your cigars when you put them in, if you have cigars that are uncellophane.
Okay.
Whether you care to believe that or not, that's your opinion. But the way you said of spraying it down, I really like that way because it really moistens the wood. I really think the wood needs to be moistened. But the way that I heard you're supposed to do it is throw the Boveda packs in there for like a week and don't open it until you're ready to check it. And then once you check it and everything is where you want it to be, that's when you can start using it.
The problem with that I have with what you just said, the first thing that you said, which is wiping it down roughs up the wood. If you're using sandpaper sprayed with water to wipe down your humidor, you're probably in the wrong. But if you're using a paper towel, paper towels, if you want to consider on the sandpaper scale, are like a 4,000 grit sandpaper. They're super fine. You could eventually sand something down with it, I guess, but you're gonna wear out your paper towel first. But I don't believe wiping it down roughs up the wood enough to where it's going to damage your cigars that are uncellophane. Knowing what I know about woodwork, which is, a little bit, I don't see it roughing up the wood that much unless you're using something like sandpaper or a piece of paper or something like that. I just don't see it. I also have heard of a way that you fill up a cup of distilled water, moisten a paper towel, you lay it over the top of the cup, and you set that in. It's basically like a makeshift Boveda pack, and then you put that in your humidor and you set it in there for a week. week and let it go and let the wood just absorb the water out of that cup and through the paper towel. I have seen that done. I've heard of that done. Again, no issues. But like I said, I have not of a bad way. The only bad way you can do this of seasoning a humidor if you use tap water, in my opinion.
Tap water, or just plain don't do it at all, which I think no one would do that, right?
I've seen it. I've actually seen it. I've heard of it done. A friend of mine actually said that he has a humidor. He bought it from a cigar shop and said, I just threw my cigars in there. I thought, I figured it was just a box to hold them in. I thought it was something special. And I was like, ooh. And I had to explain about relative humidity and everything else to the guy. And once he got an accurate, and his hygrometer was sitting, like reading 73% humidity. And I was like, what do you have in there? He literally just had 2 sticks in a 50-stick humidor. And I was like, there's no way this thing should be reading 70%, over 70% humidity. It's not that humid inside your house. Normally it's about 50% humid inside your house is usually about the comfortable level that most people keep their houses at. But this guy, he just threw it in there, and I had to go through, and I had to walk him through how to season his humidor and then rehumidify his sticks, which is something you can do. It's just not, it makes for not as good of a smoke.
Well, we're talking about seasoning your humidor, and the main focus of seasoning your humidor is basically the concept or the made of a cigar, how it's actually constructed, and it's mainly just tobacco and water. So your tobacco is cured over time, where they kind of dry it out to get the different flavor profiles that we enjoy, and then they reintroduce moisture to it, and then it is held, that moisture is held through the whole journey until we purchase it from a store or get it online or whatever, and then we stick it back in our humidor. And the whole purpose of seasoning your humidor is to hold in that same moisture that the 300 hands, remember last episode, 300 hands that took to make that cigar. And that, you don't want it to go dry out. You don't want it to be too moist. So that's the whole point of seasoning humidor.
Yeah. So just a slight detour of, they pick these tobacco leaves, and these tobacco leaves are huge, and they stack them in these houses. And then this is all down in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Cuba, subtropical climates, tropical climates, if you will, and so it's very moist down there. And they pick these out of the fields, and then they hang them up to dry, and then they stack them to dry some more. And then after they kind of cure and dry out the leaves, they strip them, and then they put them into cigars and kind of re-cure them and reintroduce them to humidity. The reason is, if you think about leaves in your backyard, right, just off of a tree, they have no moisture left, so they burn and crackle, and they split they're very fragile. So if you think about you're smoking basically a dry leaf, a bunch of dry leaves. So if you keep them too dry, it is going to split, crack, have burn problems. If you keep them too wet, again, think of the leaf in your backyard. You keep it too wet, it's not going to burn right. You're going to get a lot of smoldering, a lot of just not good, easy burning tobacco. It's going to be a hard draw, and cigar beetles are another huge issue. And if you don't know about cigar beetles, again, these are things that are outside in our planet in a tropical climate, and there's these beetles, and they'll lay their larvae and their eggs inside cigars. And if the temperature and the humidity is too out of whack, they can actually hatch and start eating your cigars. So if you find one in a hole in the cigar area, then it's likely that you had cigar beetle in your actual cigar.
I can actually honestly say I have never had a cigar beetle. I have seen pictures.
Yep.
But I haven't had it.
And normally, I'm not saying that's with the cheaper sticks or anything. There's some certain brands that I have never seen it on, but there's other, I've seen it across them all. So it's not something like if you go, I'm going to just stay away from the budget sticks, I'm going to stay away from the $3 sticks. It's something you're going to get away from. It's not at all.
But it's just one of them things that it's going to happen one way or another. I mean, I'm in Vegas, and there's scorpions, and no matter what I do, a scorpion, if it wants to get in your house, but it's going to get in your house. So if a bug wants to eat on your cigar, he's going to eat on your cigar. There's nothing you really can do. You can take precautions and then steps and procedures to try to prevent it. But overall, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Well, the cigar beetles larvae will only hatch in certain conditions, and usually those conditions are high temperature and high humidity. So if you have those two things, you're already at increased risk of having a cigar beetle come out of your cigar at all. So because I'm sure that let's be honest, I'm sure that by now I have smoked through a cigar beetle larva egg thing in one of my cigars, and I didn't know it was there because it was kept proper humidified and proper temperature.
I've read somewhere, I can't remember which cigar company it was, but there's a cigar company out there to help prevent the larva from hatching. After they do all their curing and everything, they actually put it in a freezer. They actually drop the temperature below to make sure it tries to kill everything before I can't remember which company it was.
I've heard of that. Yeah, 100%. I like it. We talk about relative humidity, and it's kind of a technical aspect, but relative humidity refers to the ratio of what absolute humidity is compared to the highest possible humidity based on the current temperature. And the absolute humidity is measured basically in grams of moisture per cubic meter of air. So it's a little bit technical, but basically what that is how much water is in a cubic meter of air. So if you think of a cubic meter, you think of a meter, and I know we went from Fahrenheit and everything else US based to meters. A meter is close to a yard. So it's basically take a yard and measure it three ways: length, width, and height. And then if you take that and you measure how much water is in there, that's your absolute humidity. Now, relative humidity is how much humidity is in your area and your space and your humidor versus what the highest is outside. And that is how you get your relative humidity. Now, your hygrometer is awesome. It's an amazing piece of technology. They come very small and they do all this stuff for you, so you don't have to try to break out a calculator and go back to X and Y and all this other stuff. And algebra kept asking me to find its X, and I said quit asking why, and it was just a bad old thing. So that's you don't have to do that. You just put in a good hygrometer, put in a solid, and your brick and mortar cigar shop. I know there's many places, almost any cigar shop you go to, whether it be online, in person, wherever, they sell hygrometers of some sort, and you will also usually sell some sort of humidification process, whether that be pillows, beads, Bovita packs, or the Cigar Oasis or whatever.
Now that you brought that up, so most people, once you start getting in the cigar game, you buy your first humidor, and your humidor comes with some sort of humidity control type device to help with the humidity in your cigar. And a lot of times you try to be cheap and you get this one that has that green foam in it. And that green foam is actually probably one of the worst things to use. But if that's all you got, by all means, please use it. It's just one of them things you gotta keep an eye on it.
So with the green foam, I use it in my travel humidor because that's not the only thing I use in that travel humidor. It comes with one. Most travel humidors kind of come with one. So I use it in my travel humidor, which I bought, and it's a nice one. But anyways, if you're going to use the green foam, here's what I'm going to say about this. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Do not use tap water. Do not use anything but distilled water. The reason I say this is where I live, the tap water it's highly laden with sulfur. I can smell it. It smells like rotten eggs coming out. It stinks. I hate it. I have to have a water filter on my water in my house just to be okay. It's safe to drink, supposedly, but it just, the water smells, and I can smell it, and it's disgusting. So if you think about that, I think about all the chemicals, the fluoride, the heavy metals, the whatever in your drinking water, that is going and leaching into your cigars when you use tap water. So if you want to smoke all that stuff and that taste and mess up with the taste of your cigars, by all means use tap water. Not to mention there's also bacteria in your tap water, and that is a breeding ground for mold. So if you want to use that stuff and put yourself at risk for mold, go for it. My suggestion, go buy the 98-cent gallon jug, go buy it of distilled water, and just use distilled water. It's so much easier, it's so much nicer, and it's cleaner.
I agree with you on that. My water here is hard, so it leaves hard water deposits everywhere. So
lime scale.
I don't want any of that to do with these wonderful premium cigars that I spend good money on to enjoy.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you spend the money on them to enjoy it. Why would you not, take care of them?
Yeah. The thing with the green sponge also is, as you mentioned, mold from the tap water. The green sponge also is hard to detect when the mold actually comes.
Yep.
Because it's a green sponge. It has crevices, nooks, and crannies that you really can't see. It goes in the inside. There's cavities. If you're actually going to be serious about cigars, go spend the money and get something a little better.
Yeah, and the thing is, for me at least, I spent $16. I think I spent $16 on a website, and I bought, this is going to go into grams again, but I bought 320 gram Bovita packs that are 69% humidity. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but when I tell you these things are like a 5x7 or a 5x8 like type picture, like a big old thing, and they're huge. They last for months. And it was a humidor with a good seal, they'll last for a while. And $16, that's what, a stick, two, depending on your price point.
And it's going to save you sticks in the long run. So
100%. It's going to save you a lot of time, worry, stress, possible sickness, everything that it can on just making sure your stuff is properly humidified.
Now, one of the other things you mentioned last episode about, you said you had a friend that uses gel. Gel and crystals are pretty much about the same. Now, I haven't had any experience with the gel. I know the gel is different than the silica bead. Or is there any downfalls to using the gel?
No. Again, it's something that you just have to monitor. The gel is nice for a lot of people because it goes in the crystals and absorbs in the crystals, and the crystals basically release it kind of like a time release type thing. As the humidity falls, it releases more humidity, and it just tries to keep the same thing, which is great. The problem with the gel is that versus the Vita pack, it's not, you can overfill, right? So if you overfill the gel and all the crystals and everything like are absorbed to the max, and you just pour more gel in there, well, your wood is thirsty. All wood is thirsty. So it's good. Your wood is going to absorb all that excess moisture it can, and it can lead to over humidification of your cigars if you're not careful.
So the gel doesn't really provide a two-way. It's really a one-way.
It can provide a two-way, but you have to be very, very cautious not to overfill your crystals, your beads, whatever it is you're using as that medium to hold the gel. You have to be careful not to overfill that, which is why I like the Bovita packs.
You said in your travel humidor you have the sponge?
Yes, I have the sponge, but again, I don't like the sponge in and of itself. I think it's a very weak system for humidification because a sponge is like any other sponge, right? It's just going to release the moisture and it's done. So in my travel humidor, what I do is my travel humidor is like probably a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Probably a 5 or maybe a 6 stick at most, and that's kind of cramming it to capacity. Travel humidor, I like to just throw a couple of Bovita packs in there. I like to take one less stick with me because usually wherever I'm going to a lounge, so I'm going to replace the sticks. So I take one less stick with me and I throw in a couple of small Bovita packs. They're not very big. They're probably like a 25 gram Bovita pack or a 30 gram Bovita pack, whatever it is. And I throw a couple of those in there and boom, it's easy. It's done. It's set. I don't have to worry about it.
My travel humidor actually has I'll probably pronounce it with silica beads. That's how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah.
So it has a small container of silica beads that sticks to the lid of it. Now I want to say it holds about 6 sticks as well. That's packed. But I found that it holds well. It's just if it doesn't take all the moisture in, it actually can leak out into the actual sponge and cushioning for your stick.
Yep.
And there's nothing worse than a wet cigar. So it's definitely something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So when I use the green sponge, because I used to use that at the very beginning before I got introduced into Bovita packs. Here's the tip, right? Here's how I used to do this. And this is how I was taught, and it's worked well for me. So you take your green sponge. It's usually in a hockey puck type little shape, small, and you put that on a paper towel and you pour your distilled water on it and let it soak in. And then if it soaks all the way in, you pour a little bit more until it's at capacity. Then what you do is you take that sponge and you flip it upside down and you let all that excess water drain out of your sponge. Otherwise it's going to leak onto your cigars. And you can dab it on that paper towel, and what that does is that takes all that excess moisture out that may go to your cigars and leak on your cigars, and that's how you use that green sponge, because usually they're attached to the top of the lid.
That's true. I've heard that you should also, with the distilled water for the green sponge, and maybe even the silica beads, add a little bit of alcohol, like whatever your drink of choice. Like I normally add a few drops of Hennessy in with it. That's supposed to help cure some of the bacteria that could possibly be hiding. I don't know how true that is, but it can't hurt.
It cannot, but I again would caution anything that is in your humidification, whatever you're using to keep your stuff humidified. Again, your cigars want moisture. So if you add, let's just say vodka, you're a vodka person. If you add too much, you could end up tasting a little bit of that vodka in your cigar. Now, again, a few drops of Henny, you probably get a nice little flavor profile from it.
Can you really blame me for dropping Hennessy in a cigar?
Not in the least. Not in the least. I can't. I've never personally done that. I will say that it is it's something very interesting. But again, like I said, whatever you put in your humidification process, if it's a sponge, silica bead, whatever, that is going to go into your cigars. I can't add that your cigars will absorb it no matter what.
Have you used pillows? I think I've seen them. I don't think I've actually ever used a pillow.
I have seen them. I have not used them. Pillows are similar to like a Bovita pack. Usually the cigar pillows are
they dry out much faster. They dry out way faster than
they do. They do, and they're made to be rehumidified.
Yes.
Caveat: Bovita packs are not made to be rehumidified. Can you? Absolutely. Have I done it? 100%. And do I still do it to this day? 100%. Will I continue to do it? 1,000,000%. Cost effective. I do throw them out after they get worn for a while because I actually talked to a Bovita traveling salesman, Bovita representative. That's the word I was looking for, representative. And he said, you shouldn't do it. Can you? Yes. Should you? No. The reason is because Bovita uses crystals to maintain and breathe. So what happens is as it dries up, those crystals get to that membrane. That membrane shrinks around those crystals, and the crystals, right? If you think of like a diamond or any kind of crystal structure, it has pointy ends, right? So those can actually tear the permeable membrane and not make it a 69% Bovita pack anymore. It could be closer to like a 70%, 71% Bovita pack without you actually realizing it.
Let's be honest. He's a Bovita representative.
Again,
I want you to buy more Bovita packs. Come on.
Right. Do I understand and does that make sense in my head? 100%.
Yeah. The science behind it makes sense to me.
Do I 100% believe him that I should never rehumidify my Bovita packs? Not in the slightest. I will. Everybody's selling something, follow the money.
Yeah, there you go. Last humidification is the one I used. I talked about it last episode, is the electronic. The electronic is an apparatus that actually moistens a pillow sponge-like structure that's located inside an electronic device that releases humidity when the built-in hygrometer calls for more humidity inside your humidor. The problem, or I shouldn't say problem, the one pitfall of this is, drawback is a better word, is you have to constantly have it monitored. So mine beeps. Not all of them beeps. Some of them are actually Wi-Fi enabled. However you get the job done, it's maintenance over time. One of them things, like you said, don't use tap water. There's actually cigar solutions you can actually use. I still use distilled water. I like the price of distilled water a lot better.
98 cents for a gallon. You can't hardly beat it.
And I have a Tupperware dish that I have 2 extra capsules in. So when it beeps, all I do is take one out, put it in, put the dry one into the Tupperware, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, and it's kind of similar to how I rehumidified Bovita packs. I go in there and I check it. I checked all my Bovita packs before I grabbed the stick out for this episode, and I just kind of lightly squeeze them. But the Bovita packs, the way I rehumidify them, for those who are curious, because that's the one thing that I was looking for when I first started, was how do I rehumidify? Nobody's talking about how to rehumidify. Here's what I do. Some people I have talked to online, they just chuck theirs into a container, usually a Tupperware container, full of distilled water, and they chuck it in there and they just let it soak up whatever humidification it can, and then they let it dry out, and then they because it's a kind of a cardboardy wrapper on the Bovita packs, and they let that dry out, and then they put it back in the humidor. I don't like that. I think it damages the outside of them too much quickly. So what I do is I wet down, not where it's dripping, but I definitely moisten up paper towels, and I loosely wrap them around my Bovita packs, and then I stick them in a Tupperware. This preserves the outside wrapper, and then after about 72 hours at the most, I go and check them, and if my paper towels are dry, my Bovita packs are nice and squishy again, I chuck them back in my humidor. Easy.
Easy peasy. I like it.
Yeah, super easy.
Well, we've been saying Bovita the whole time. I get it. Bovita is like the catch-all word for this two-way humidification pack. More out there than just Bovita. There's other brands out there.
I will say that it is the industry standard, though.
Correct. I mean, most of the time, if you talk about Bovita, you talk about any kind of two-way humidification. Even if it is the other brand, 9 times out of 10, you're still going to call it a Bovita pack. Sorry, other brands. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles.
They are the best, the biggest, the kind of the way that it goes. You know, everybody says Tupperware. Is it really Tupperware? No, it's a Rubbermaid container. Yeah. Okay, but everyone still calls it Tupperware.
So I am about on my second, third. I will say I'm getting leather and I would say some unsweetened cocoa. There's some spices rolling in. Yeah, this is a really nice cigar. I don't know the price point of it. I got it in a little party pack that I ordered. So far, so good.
You know, off topic. Maybe our listeners will like it too. We could talk about this. Maybe we should talk about palettes on a future episode.
That'd be a good topic. We will definitely discuss that.
Yep. If anybody has any questions, obviously our Instagram or send us an email. We'll happily talk about it. But I think this is a very, very important piece to talk about, and that is deadlines and how everybody needs deadlines.
All right. We will definitely jump right into that right after a quick little pause. Hey, Austin.
Yeah.
Hey, I know you was doing this Leadership of the Leaf podcast and you were smoking on some cigars.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, how would I know what cigars you're smoking on?
Oh, that is a phenomenal question. At the beginning of the episodes, we always talk about what cigars we are smoking. But if you want to see a picture of what the band looks like, because maybe you can't find it or we didn't explain it good enough, you can always go to our Instagram or our website and we'll post pictures of what we're smoking and usually what we're drinking with every episode. All right, welcome back to Leadership of the Leaf. And right before the break, I started talking about our leadership topic, which is deadlines and how everybody needs them. And this comes from the president to the trash guy to everybody in between. Everybody needs deadlines.
Deadlines is a way of life that even without thinking too much behind it, there's a deadline associated with almost anything that you do. Even down to watching a TV show, even to ordering French fries at McDonald's. There's a deadline for everything.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny, you mentioned TV shows, and my son, for those of you who don't know, I have a toddler, and my son, we went to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we, at my house, don't have cable. We use streaming services. So it was hilarious to me when he watched an episode of his favorite show, and he goes, "Can we watch it again?" I said, "No." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "No, we can't watch it again. That was it. This is live TV, bud." He goes, "Huh?" And then he kept asking me to like fast forward through the commercials. And I said, "No, buddy, I can't. This is live TV. I can't do this." And he could not grasp the concept. Now he's, again, toddler age, but he couldn't grasp the concept of once the TV show is over, the TV show is over. And I would say that we have gotten away from that in a society inundated with streaming services. Pause, rewind, rewatch, whatever you want to do, however much you want to do. The only deadline is when Netflix or somebody says, "Hey, we're removing this at the end of this month," and you will no longer be able to watch it. So then you either have to go buy it or find it on a different streaming service.
Right. Speaking of streaming service, I get this whole streaming service thing. Just to reel it back to the deadline, even with your streaming service, after a certain amount of time, you have to renew it. If you don't renew it before your deadline is met, then you no longer have that streaming service. So there you go again, even in the entity of your toddler wanting to watch TV with deadlines because the TV show is over. He's so used to it being streaming. If you wasn't to pay your Netflix bill or your Disney bill, then the deadline for that will be over too. It's just one of them things that everyone just don't really consider until it's gone.
Yep. Everyone gets, well, the bill's due date. The bill's due date. Okay, fine. Most people got that. Even the free spirits out there, will sit there and go, well, I got to pay this bill by this day. Otherwise, my service gets cut off. I lose my house. I lose power, whatever the case happens to be. In leadership, if you don't give a deadline to somebody, you're doing them a disservice, and you're setting them up for what I would say you're setting them up for is failure. Because if I don't have a deadline, I immediately prioritize that to the bottom of the list because I don't have a deadline. I'll get it done whenever I get it done, whenever I have free time, which in most industries is almost never, because you're always getting new tasks.
Yeah, if someone is going to be given a project, you always have to provide some kind of deadline. If you don't provide that deadline, then what's going to happen is that project is going to become stagnant. It's just going to keep getting circled around. And then what's going to happen is they're going to keep building on it, trying to expand on it. And eventually it's just going to become a hot mess. When it's actually come down to the brass tacks, you have to have a deadline for them to meet some kind of goal. You have to set it up. It just has to go that way.
Right. And the thing is, and I think I have seen this with actually kind of what's hot in the news right now, at least in certain circles, is the Cybertruck from Tesla. There was not, as far as the general public was aware, there's not a deadline for when that truck will be put to market. They have moved the deadline several times. And so now you're getting these reports of how much the truck has changed, how much all these things have changed. And so, it's kind of interesting to see those who reserved that truck, if they're still going to even want the truck that was premiered. They set a deadline, they couldn't meet it, they had to move it back. I get that. However, if they didn't have a hard set deadline, then it's difficult to make sure that project gets done on time.
Well, the funny thing with deadlines is they have to be met. Now, if they're met with the expectations that everyone is looking for, then that's great. But if your deadline is met and the product that you have to show the world is not quite there, it doesn't pass all the specs and regs and everything from the highway department and all the other safety, then the deadline has to get pushed back. But regardless of how you look at it, that deadline was set there. They made their deadline. It just wasn't a product that the public or Elon or whomever wasn't looking for. It didn't have that je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. So it's just a new year, right? And at the beginning of the year or end of the year, however you want to look at it, everybody makes resolutions, right? Yeah. Everybody makes a resolution. So here's my take on this. And I kind of got mad because I saw a Facebook meme and it kind of upset me. And now see if you understand why I got upset by this Facebook meme picture, whatever you want to call it. It said, "This year, don't make resolutions. They're worthless." And that was basically the end of it. And I said, well, hold on. Resolutions are not necessarily worthless. If you resolve, base word of resolution, to lose weight, that's a very common one, right? Right. I'm gonna lose weight this year. Great, good on you, bud, gal, whatever you want to say. The problem with this is everyone sets these resolutions, but they're not smart. And I say smart as the acronym, not just the word smart, right? As Homer would say, Homer Simpson, SMRT. They're not smart. And when I say smart, the acronym is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. And that, my friends, is a deadline.
Correct. Man, you have definitely hit the nail on the head there. Because if you don't have that timeline or any merits to want to achieve that goal in a timely manner, then all you're doing is just talking.
Yep. I had a friend that said that she wanted to lose 62 pounds. I said, oh, that's an ambitious goal. Let's go through the SMART, right? Okay, you got 62 pounds. You measured that by pounds. That's attainable. Is it realistic? 100%. What's your timeline? The minute I said timeline, I said, think about that. 5 months, 6 months. They're like, 5 months? That's not realistic. I said, well, hold on. 5 months for 62 pounds. If I just go 60 pounds divided by 5, I'm looking at what? Rough estimate of like 12 pounds a month. You break that down even further, that's 3 pounds a week. That's not actually that, I say difficult. It is difficult, but that's doable. That's real. That's attainable. If she had said, I'm going to lose 62 pounds in like a month, then I would say, 1, that's unhealthy. 2, that's unattainable.
Right. Setting a deadline is you're providing a contract, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because if let's say I borrowed money from you and I say I'll pay you back, of course you're going to be like, well, when are you going to pay me back? Like, I'll pay you back whenever. That's not really giving me a set parameter there. So if we were to draw up a contract to have it signed, notarized, and all the above, then of course you would put a time frame on there. Be like, hey, you borrowed $100 from me and I expect to have it back within a month. Could you sign the dotted line? Contractually obligated to a deadline that we have both agreed upon. And that's the same way you would set up any kind of task or goals or anything for anyone that works for you, that you was to implement in your project towards.
Yeah. And the thing, for me, if you're running a business, you're in the military, you run a business, as part of a business, you're a manager, you're a leader, even if you work for yourself, right? Your customers, whoever it is, somebody is always going to expect a deadline. I have seen it go very wrong when a customer has said, hey, I want to purchase this widget. And use that widget in a very broad term, obviously, which is something just that you produce. I want to purchase this widget from you. And they go, okay, cool. Give me the money for the materials. I'll produce said widget. You can take, you'll have already paid for it. I'll give it to you. Well, the problem with that is, did you say when? Did he or she, the business owner, the person you worked for, even the underling, hey, I needed that report. Okay. The very first question that I ask, and that anybody should really ask, is when? When am I going to get this? When should I expect this? When should I come back and check and see if this is done? Because again, even if you set a deadline, I would say you need to set markers as the best word, goalposts. Hey, here's a 6-month project. I'm going to check in with you on a monthly basis and see your progress. That way, if you are saying, hey, this project is more than I thought it was going to be, I can't get it done, we can reassess. But you've got to set some sort of timeline, deadline, everything.
True. I work for a very hard person to work for when it comes to actually wanting goals accomplished. And some of the goals that he would set forth are slightly difficult, but he understands that. So he's setting an unrealistic timeline to start with, an unrealistic deadline, so to speak, to start with. So for instance, let's say there's a 2-story building and he wanted it painted blue. One, okay, we're going to paint it blue. Yes, sir, right away. No excuses, no anything. No, I don't have the manpower. I don't have the tools. It's like, okay, sir, you want the building painted blue? We'll make that happen. Yes, I want to paint it blue by tomorrow. Yes, sir, we're going to paint it blue by tomorrow. I got you. Your deadline is tomorrow. If I set forth, bust my ass, get half that building painted, and he comes and sees my waypoint, my goal, my checkpoint where I'm at now. Of course, he's not going to be angry because one, I jumped right on the task and I worked through day and night and got to where I was. Did I get the deadline done? No, but he has a clear understanding of why it wasn't accomplished. Then he will set forth another deadline.
Right. So what I always liken this to is people in general will always fail. They'll always succeed down to whatever the expectation is, whether that's expectations in life, expectations in a deadline, whatever the expectation is. A deadline is essentially the expectation of how quickly you're going to get something done, right?
Right.
And I've talked to teachers about this, and I've seen this in action. If I say I want this done in a week, people are going to get it done most likely in exactly a week. Not saying you don't have overachievers that are going to get it done in an hour. Hey, that's great. Good on you, bud. The problem is that most people are going to say, oh, I have a week to do this. And they're going to push this off and procrastinate about it to the very last minute. And that's just something that you're going to have to kind of get over it.
Well, procrastination is like the complete opposite of a deadline. Just in general, someone that's going to procrastinate isn't really someone you want on your team to begin with, because when you set a solid deadline, you want to make sure that everyone is moving forward as best and as quickly as they can to achieve that deadline at really the highest level that they can get it accomplished. So that's exactly what you want to push your people to do, and that's exactly what you're going to look for in the end.
Right. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't want to set a deadline for this individual because I don't want to seem like I'm pushy or whatever the case is. But the problem is that if you don't set that deadline, then you're setting that employee up for failure and setting yourself up for frustration and confusion. Because if you say, hey, I thought we were going to have this thing accomplished in a week, and they said, well, yeah, I didn't know that. I had no idea that you wanted it done in a week. I was going to get it done in a month. Well, that's very frustrating as a leader if you're sitting there saying, hey, I really thought we were just going to get this thing done as quickly as possible. Well, okay, boss, but you didn't tell me this. So clear, concise deadlines are an absolute must. And generals and armies, CEOs, COOs, CFOs, middle managers, everybody should set a deadline for whatever the case happens to be.
When you say like CEOs and generals and stuff, that just reminds me of something I read before where it was talking about Walt Disney. Now, Walt Disney was a man that put, the Mickey Mouse and all that together. But there were so many deadlines that he had set. If you actually pay attention, the deadlines were pushed so much to where they actually reused some of the animation to redraw over different animation cells to make sure deadlines are met. That's how stringent like deadlines could be. And when you have a boss like that wants you to achieve the best, you're going to find ways to make it happen so your deadline is met almost each and every time.
Yeah, and that's the thing, with I would say that is a key aspect of everything, and it doesn't matter. I am a big fan of the show Bar Rescue, and I know you are too.
Yes.
And I see when I see these bars that tend to be failing, usually what's happening is these individuals working in this bar have given up because their managers don't care. The thing is, though, is those managers are not holding people to the accountability portion of this. It's something we'll talk about next week, that the deadline to clean a bar is the end of the night, period.
Right. There's different deadlines. You brought up a very good point with that, because there was a cigar lounge that I was in, and they're supposed to clean the ashtrays every hour on the hour. That's to prevent the smell. We talked about that last episode. It wasn't getting done. So the boss had to come up with some kind of way to make sure that this was being done. So he set like a timer, and it like flashed a light and had like a little tone, like a bell tone that would go off every hour on the hour. And that would keep everyone in check. Like, oh, I didn't clean the ashtrays. I better hurry up and do it because my deadline is right now.
Right. And again, like I said, everybody fails down. As I say, succeeds down. Because if I have up until this point, I'm going to prioritize all my other stuff that's due before that, ahead of that, obviously, right? I got to meet deadlines. And that's just the way it is. I had a friend, one of my best friends in high school, and he is a master procrastinator. Now, this guy has a master's degree from Cambridge University in England in chemical engineering. He is super, super smart guy. The problem is the dude would procrastinate to no end. He would go out and he would go hang out with friends, whatever he wanted to do, party, whatever. And if he had a paper due, he would just wait until the night before, write the entire paper and be done. Yes, he met the deadline, but was it his best work? Probably not. Whereas I'm completely opposite. As soon as I get something on my plate, a project, a task, whatever the case is, I want it off of my plate so quickly it bugs me to no end. And that's, my downfall. But I want to be ahead of that timeline and that deadline, so that way, in case the last minute, hey, if we could work this weekend, that'd be great, doesn't come across my desk.
Right. I'm gonna need you to come in on Saturday.
Right. I don't know how many times that was brought up to, hey, so I'm going to need you to work an extra 4 hours today. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And usually it was because we did not meet a deadline. We didn't meet a quota of some sort. I didn't meet some sort of checkpoint with the project that I was working on. Whether it was my fault or not, whether it was due to an issue I could control or not, it was going to happen. That was what my manager wanted. Yes, sir. Got it. Make it happen, Captain. It is what it is.
I often tell people you don't want to be the leader or the manager or whatever that's going to constantly keep changing that deadline. So if you set a deadline for 3 hours and then you come back and be like, yeah, I need this done in 2 hours, you're becoming like an impossible person to please. So you don't want to really travel down that road either. I mean, time management is valuable for everyone. So I'm going to manage my time dependent upon the deadline that I'm given for each project or each task that I have.
Right. And that's the thing, again, time management, deadlines, it all kind of ties back in together. And you and me have been around the block enough to know that if somebody says a deadline of, let's just call it a month, they're probably going to start looking for it at the 2-3 week mark. That's when they're going to start being like, hey, did you get that done? No, you said I had a month. Oh, in actuality, I really need it now. That's not fair to you as a worker. That's not fair to your underlings as a boss. And it's not okay. I'm reading a book about General Grant, prolific cigar smoker, one of the greatest generals this country has seen, helped bring about the end of the Civil War. He would always set the deadline after assessing the situation, and he would hold his people to it. And he would check on the deadline, which was great. I give the guy props. He would check on the deadline. Hey, I told you to get this done in 12 hours. It's 12 hours. Where are we at with this? And he would check on it. And if you needed to move the deadline, great. But he expected his people to be done at that deadline, period.
Perfect for what a boss, a general, that's exactly what they expect. Because they don't want people on their team that's not going to meet that deadline. If you got a group of individuals that's on your team or your project, they're not meeting or at least have great reasons of why that deadline wasn't met, then you need to get rid of them. You need to move them to a different team, find out their strengths and weaknesses, and you need to get them off the line. A good example of that is Hell's Kitchen. I watch Hell's Kitchen. I like Ramsay. And he tells people that's trying to be the head chef is if that guy is not making the chicken fast enough, you need to put him on appetizers or something. Get somebody on there that's going to be able to cook the chicken in time. Because all these plates got to go to the table at the same time. So if someone's not pulling their weight and the general comes and checks and 12 hours, I'm not done, yeah, he needs to do something.
Yeah, and that's the thing, for me, and talent management is a whole aspect in and of itself, right? The thing for me is, and you kind of hit it again, the accountability portion is absolutely key when it comes to talking deadlines and making sure that everything is getting done the way it's supposed to be done. Not saying micromanage by any means. You got to give your people leeway.
Please don't micromanage. Please don't micromanage.
One of the things I absolutely adore about General Grant is he would say, here's what I want done, and here's your deadline, right? So he would sit there and say, here's X, here's your timeline now, and he would leave, and then he would just leave. He gave the people leeway to do it how they wanted to do, right? Not micromanaging. Hey, I want that hill taken over by this time, whatever it was, right? Objective X by this time. Go, do, execute. Then it was up to whoever was doing it, was in charge of it, to get it done, right? So that's, trying not to micromanage.
Well, I can clearly see the expectations that General Grant set for his people, and that's great. With no procrastination, that hill wouldn't be taken over how it was supposed to be done. I do agree with giving people full confidence and faith in getting the job accomplished and not micromanaging. That's a perfect leadership skill. I do see a lot of managers tend to micromanage, whereas the leader normally gives the ball to the person and let them run it how they need to, as long as the goal is still being accomplished. So, deadlines is something that has to be set. Deadlines is an expectation. Make clear of what your expectations is, that you want it to be delivered and when. That's the best way to set that up for success.
Yeah, and that absolutely means that we can take control of our work, and if we're free of micromanagement, we can take control of that work. Our underlings can take control of that work, and we can really get this goal, project, whatever it is, and we can get it done basically free of confusion. Everybody's on the same page. We're all singing from the same sheet of music, and that's really kind of what it comes down to. Is if you don't set that timeline, that expectation, then your people are nobody's the same. Your people are gonna get it done in a different way than you had expected, and everybody does not share the same priorities. You and me, again, have worked together. I have worked for you, and I will say that you've always given out the clear guidelines, the timelines. Hey, Austin, get X done by Y. Got it, boss. I'm on it. And I go and execute. I make it happen, Captain. I gave him hell, Tinkerbell, whatever you want to say. And it's just one of those things that if I didn't have that, I don't have the same priorities. Everybody looks at something, the same thing differently. You know, it's of the utmost importance to make sure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what needs to get done, when.
The main key in that is when. When is just such a powerful aspect of the whole deadline philosophy, so to speak, because without a win, we've been preaching it this whole time. Without a win, no one is ever going to exceed any kind of expectations because there's not a deadline to achieve. So everyone would just be going willy-nilly, so to speak, and no one will be going in the same direction. A deadline is just so important with every aspect of management, leadership, business, and general life itself. I don't know how to express it any more or any more important.
Yeah, you can't highlight the importance of deadlines. You know, we can't highlight it enough. And it's just one of those things, you know, even your wife, you know, in life, you know, my wife gives me a honey-do list, right?
Yeah.
That honey, it's so funny. I've talked with people and they're like, they're like, man, she'll come out, hey, Austin, did you get this done? No, wife, it's been 6 months. Quit asking me. Like, geez, what do you want?
Right.
You know, she didn't give me a deadline. I'm gonna put it off, however, until I feel like getting around to it. 9 times out of 10, I don't feel like ever getting around to it because her jobs that she wants me to do suck. You know, it's always the not fun jobs.
It's a honey-do list. So if your wife anything like mine, like, hey, honey, could you do this? Honey, could you do that? That's it. There's no, hey, could you do this by tonight? Could you do this before tomorrow? Or, hey, I was looking to try to get this done by next weekend. No, it's never really given a timeline, a deadline at all.
Right. And it's I say frustrating. And it's very much one of those things where I have tried to explain to her the importance of the timelines and the deadlines. Hey, if you want something done, I need to know when you want it done by. You can't just tell me, hey, go clean out the garage. Okay, cool. I'll get around to it whenever. It's the middle of winter right now. I don't want to go out in the garage when it's cold, man. And then by the time summer rolls around, it's hot. I don't want to go out there and sweat. That's no fun. And you can always find an excuse to not get something done, whatever that may be. And it is just one of those things where unless you have the deadline, you're just not going to make it a priority.
Man, you definitely struck a chord in me when you said excuse. So I have a teenage daughter. She has homework. She has chores. She decides not to do them and make every excuse. And then I get a notification from the school saying that her assignment is late or her assignment was not turned in or complete. So right now I'm fighting that battle. I'm managing being a leader to my child right now to try to get her to understand that deadlines are important. You go ahead and get your schoolwork done in a timely manner, then you can play your Nintendo Switch. You can play the computer games, all you want. But you need to accomplish your goals, your deadlines, meet every single deadline first, and then you have infinite amount of time to play until you get another project on your plate. Until then, you can't play your games until that deadline is met.
Yep.
So you lollygag if you want, but your deadlines are already set.
Yeah.
Teenage daughters, love them.
Oh yeah, I can't wait till. I can wait till my son gets to that age. But well, you know, that's the thing. It's the same thing with adults. You know, I work with a lot of young adults, 18, 19, 20, and inevitably, if I tell them I need this done, if they're smart, they'll ask me, when do you want it done by? If they either try to take advantage of the situation, they're not focused on the end goal, or something along those lines, they're just going to say, all right, cool, sounds good. And then they're just going to go off and do what they want to do because I did not set a deadline. And then when I come back and I say, WTF, they're going to be like, what do you mean? When did you want that done by? Well, I actually needed that done by 2 hours ago, and then they just kind of look at me and go, oh, oops.
Sir, you was not free of confusion.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's, I have a tendency to over-explain things to bosses, to underlings, and just to make sure that they are free and clear of any sort of confusion of what I expect and what I want when it comes to the project that I'm giving.
When you do not provide a deadline, but it's definitely a set project or a task that needs to be accomplished, sometimes it's kind of nice being a leader not to set that deadline every now and again, because you want to see how much initiative is the word I was looking for. How much initiative one of these young guys can actually going to demonstrate or show.
So I will say that I do that with unimportant projects.
Perfect.
So that way I can kind of test. I say test. It is a test. 100%. I will say test. So I can test the employee.
Yeah, because a lot of times you already know how long said task should take.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing for me, I recently had an employee do a task, and they and I think I told you this story before the show. This task should take an hour, and I know it should take an hour because I've performed this task myself. Even going methodically through this task, it should take no more than an hour. It took this individual 3 hours. So I then came up and said, hey, what is the problem? And that's the thing. I did not jump down the employee's throat. I asked, are you okay? Are you competent? Yes. So you've been trained on how to do this? Yes. Are you confident in your ability to get this task done? Yes. So then let's ask the question, why you did not meet that timeline, why you did not meet that standard. Because then now I have to get into the topic of our next leadership, which is accountability.
Right. And you kind of measure the accountability by setting a deadline. So This works perfect with our episodes that we're going to be kicking out. Next week is going to be accountability, which is going to match with the deadline. So you have to know what deadlines are before you can accept the accountability. So with this episode, we talked about different humidification
aspects,
different ways, different humidification devices.
Mm-hmm. Talked about what is humidity and the absolute importance of humidification.
We also discussed in depth. I think we did a pretty good job in depth talking about deadlines and the importance of management and leadership, mainly leadership, setting deadlines, a clear, concise when you want something accomplished.
Absolutely. And again, if there's some aspect where you disagree, I like to hear other people's opinions on this. And I know there are going to be people who will say, I don't like giving deadlines because I like my employees to manage themselves. That's great. But what you're then expecting is everybody to be have just as much initiative, have just as much ambition, drive as yourself, unless you're very, very self-aware and from a different point of view, from a different through a different lens, so to speak. And that's very important. But if you want those types of people, then what you're going to end up, hopefully, and this is can be a good thing, and especially if you have the end all, if you're the end all be all for hiring and firing, what you can end up with is a team of high drive, low drag, high speed people that go through and complete tasks that they are given in a very, very timely manner. And that's great. If you're in a business that requires people to be self-sufficient, self-manage, especially if you're a project manager working remote or something, and you're setting all the deadlines and you got to have stuff done, and you have a team with you and you can trust that team to get something done. That's great. And that's what you're going to do if you say, hey, I don't want to give deadlines. I want you guys to do something. Another aspect that I really like is letting people decide their own timelines.
That's a pretty good feature. That'll really give you a gauge of how much initiative and ambition that someone actually has. You will find out or discover, do they match your ambition? Do they match the drive that you're looking for?
Right. And again, it's great if you have a small team, if you have if you're the end all be all and you have a small team, that's great. When you start getting into larger companies, military, certain things that are time bound, whether it's time bound to the customer, time bound in regards to, hey, I got to have standards of cleanliness, something like that, then the deadlines are an absolute must. So as we're talking about the leadership, obviously I don't want to get away from the cigars. So I believe I'm about in my final third of my cigar, and I'm definitely getting, I don't believe I ever really said what I was supposed to be getting from this cigar. And it's a complex cigar. It's very good, but I'm definitely getting cocoa and coffee. With a hint of pepper, and then I'm also definitely getting a wood. I don't want to say cedar, but definitely like a woody type, earthy type taste from this cigar. It's very, very good, and I would say that it kind of goes through that lawless where I say it lends itself to the name lawless, and the fact that it doesn't necessarily follow the laws of cigars. It just kind of says, here's all the flavors that you want, and here's the flavors that you're getting, and it's very, very good cigar. If you haven't picked up a Black Label Trading Company cigar, period, I recommend them. The Lawless is one of my favorites from this company. But how's yours, man?
Mine is finishing out very nice. I'm in that final third as well. It's bringing in that unsweetened cocoa. It's really turned more of I want to say a spice pepper, not a horrible spice pepper. I want to say spices, but spices doesn't give it justice. This is my first time smoking a Bandolero. I would venture forth and say I would smoke this again. What I say is humidor worthy. Yes, I would say it's humidor worthy. Yeah. How about you? Is yours humidor worthy?
Oh, 100%. I love Black Label Trading cigars. This is actually kind of a funny situation. Story. A funny story. I spoke last week about stepping out of the comfort zone to get more cigars. And I'm very much a person that is drawn to bands on a cigar. Some people are like, that's just lame. Why would you go with a band of cigar when you don't know what the flavor notes are going to be? I understand what they're saying. If I'm not a spicy guy, then why would I go for a cigar that could be a spice capsule, not a pepper bomb necessarily, but something that's very spicy and its flavor profile. And again, what I say to that is what we talked about last week, is stepping outside your comfort zone. I don't know what I don't know. And I will say that finding Black Label Trading Company, it's definitely a boutique brand, but finding this cigar company, it was kind of a diamond in the rough for me. I don't want to say diamond in the rough. It was a lucky draw for me in the fact that I found this. I've liked a lot of their cigars, and Lawless is definitely one of my favorite, and the price point is absolutely something that I can keep in stock.
I can see that. I definitely need to try a Black Label. I don't believe I have. Maybe is that Killer Bee? Maybe Killer Bee's Black Label.
So Killer Bee is part of their I say off brand. They like sister a lot brand? Of sister brand. It's made by BTK. I forget what it's called. Black Trading Company with a K or something like that. But it's a sister brand. It's kind of an offshoot, a sub company of the company Killer Bee is. But they're really Black Label Trading Company they're a small brand. However, they are very, very good at what they do, and they're very good at making their cigars kind of they can hit you in the mouth with the spicy cocoa coffee flavors. But oh man, is it just a wonder to behold and a wonder to taste. And I absolutely love it.
Well, Bandolero has been a nice journey along smoking this one. I haven't really seen them to buy at the cigar lounge or brick and mortar that I frequent, but I definitely will look for them. Would I say I will buy them all the time? The price point on these, I believe they're around 16 or above. That's a little high to fill your humidor with. Yep. But, every now and again, it's nice to, spend a little change on something. just to change up, step out of your zone there.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to what we talked about in that first week. You got to step outside your comfort zone. That doesn't mean you got to go straight to the $20 cigars by any stretch of the imagination. There's guys that I've known that they smoke. I don't smoke anything less than $15. Great. Wow. Good. Great, I guess. If you're trying to impress somebody, then you're that guy. You're that asshole. Yeah. But there's so many good, great cigars under a $15 price point, under a $10 price point. In all reality, I think the Black Label Trading Company's price point is around somewhere between 8 to 11, maybe 13, somewhere in there is dollars. And I'm like, man, that's right under that $15 price point. And these are just, like I said, phenomenal. It's a complex flavor profile, but it's so good.
Well, I remember when I first started, the price for a good cigar when I first started was around $5. You want a good $5 cigar. You know, years and years have passed now. So for a decent premium cigar, you're going to pay around $10. So if you're paying under 15, between 10 and 15 for a good premium cigar, then I think you're right in the ballpark. I mean, once you start stepping out of that, then you're talking about high dollar, and I'm not that guy. Every now and again, I do enjoy them, but my price point is around $10 to $15. So.
Yeah, like I said, budget sticks, I have zero issues with them. I find budget sticks that I enjoy all the time. Never a bad thing to go pick up a $5 cigar and try it out. Who knows? Maybe you'll find a great daily smoker. I don't know. Not saying that I have found one of those necessarily. As far as a daily smoker, man, it's so hard for me to smoke the same thing day in and day out. Again, cigarette smokers have that that loyal brand loyalty. I personally think that if you find a cigar that you enjoy every day, great, good on you. I don't want to pigeonhole myself, so to speak, into one brand, one type of cigar.
Well, there's quite a few different cigar smokers. I love some of my friends. They are box smokers. They'll buy the same box, and they're happy with that. That's fine. I'm not a box smoker. I prefer to buy 5 or 6 different singles than buying a whole box of one. We discussed about that last episode. One point I do want to make: there is no such thing as a bad cigar. There's always better ones.
And again, you can go find the better ones. You can buy the Davidoffs. Some people buy the Davidoffs and they're not impressed with them. I have a guy who goes, he doesn't have a humidor, but he goes and he'll buy 2 cigars and he'll smoke both cigars in a weekend, which is fine. And that's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to do. But I just don't think that there's necessarily a need for me to keep one type and one type only in my humidor. Now, will I keep a certain brand of cigar? If I find one that I like, will I keep that in my humidor at all times so I can always fall back to it? Sure, why not? But again, there's always those cigars that are just, they're hiding out there. There's so many companies. There's so many companies out there. You know, you can go through and try to name all the companies, and there's a lot of those big companies. Arturo Fuente, Romeo y Julieta, Atabey, Perdomo, United Cigars is a big umbrella company. Man, there's some that are like that, and they just, oh yeah, those are some good cigars. Yeah, those are great. But there's a lot of boutique cigars. You know, you think Black Label Trading Company, Warfighter Tobacco, Southern Draw that I had last week, you know, Leaf by Oscar. You know, there's those ones that I'm just like, man, these are good. They specialize in like 4 types of cigars, so to speak, and they do it really, really well, and then they expand from there, and that's great. Yeah, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the big companies. My Father's, Romeo y Juliet, Arturo Fuente, Gurkha, United, Camacho, Perdomo, stuff like that. Those guys are great at what they do. They make a lot of great cigars at all different price points. Phenomenal for those guys. I like finding kind of boutique-ish type cigars. And again, you know, it's funny. We talked about when I went out there for my business trip, we were looking for some Dunbarton Tobacco cigars.
I remember that, yeah.
And couldn't find them. Got nasty looks when I asked for Dunbarton Tobacco. Don't know why, just happened. You know, there's so many good ones out there. I hate to sit there and again pigeonhole myself into one type, one brand of cigar.
Well, that was kind of the point of this podcast. We started it because we chit chat anyway over FaceTime, so we decided to go ahead and put it into the podcast world. And we just tried different cigars and we discuss them and we talk about what we like and what we don't like and what we look forward to next time.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. I am going to try. I will say this is going to be impossible because I like what I like, but you know, I'm going to attempt to at least try many different cigars on this podcast and try to give you guys, you listeners, you girls, my take on different various cigars. Southern Draw, one of the best boutique brands out there right now, by far. A phenomenal smoke, great quality, great construction, great consistency, and a flavor profile to fit dang near anybody. And I know that you had several Southern Draws and that you've enjoyed several Southern Draws.
Yeah, Rose of Sharon. I actually enjoyed Jacob's Ladder, which you smoked last episode. I haven't tried the Cedrus. I need to.
Again, you know, the Cedrus, was not my cup of tea. If you like the taste/smell of cedar, and that's what you want, and that's all you want, the Cedrus is great. I know people that is their favorite cigar, and good on them. High five for you. Enjoy what you want. You do you. However, it was not my cup of tea. I had it that one time, and I think we were talking over FaceTime, and I kept making faces, and you were laughing at me. Because it just wasn't my cup of tea, man.
That's what I'm saying. There's no bad cigars. You just there's a better one out there for you. That's all that is.
Yeah. It is definitely one of those things. You got to get out. You got to try different things. You got to do different things to see what you do and do not like, because you may find the cigar that you've been smoking is not maybe your cup of tea. Like mine was not Gurkha. It was not. Have I tried a Gurkha since I went away from them? I'm going to be honest and say no. I'm kind of frightened to, because that's all I smoked, and I was like, man, I don't know if it was good. I was smoking them to be cool. I want to be that guy. But I've been afraid. So many people hate on Gurkha that I talk to. Oh, you can't believe you smoke Gurkha, blah, blah, blah. But man, I got to try. I got to give them another shot, and I will try to buy 2 in the future when I get around to it.
Right. Gurkha has one I really like. I know you don't care too much for them right now, but they have one that's cognac infused, and that's up my alley, buddy. That's
yeah.
Right there.
Up your alley. You and cognac. And it's funny, I just said, we were just talking about giving deadlines, and I literally just said, when I get around to it.
Yeah.
If I was smart, I would say, I will do it within the next month or so. I will buy a couple more Gurkhas. Who knows? I got to do a little bit more cigar shopping, probably next week, and I may look at just buying a couple Gurkhas. They have a Connecticut wrapper Gurkha. I don't remember what it's called. I have to look it up, because I just don't follow that brand all that closely. Maybe I will give that a shot.
Well, I look forward to you giving it a try, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on it.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for listening to Leadership of the Leaf. The comments and opinions expressed by the host and guests does not reflect the opinions of those that broadcast this show, nor does it reflect any of our affiliates.